Welcome to the Conquer Risk podcast. My name is Manish Kata, and as always, or almost always, I have the Director of Advisor Education, Jeff Goodnow, with us. This week, we're actually going to talk about something interesting. Our Director of Marketing, Christopher Norton, every quarter goes through and finds all the content we put out and analytically goes through the engagement. And so he approached us the other day and said, look, why don't we do a show where once a quarter we go through the top posts, the top podcasts, and sort of discuss what advisors are engaging with us on, what they're liking, what the top 10 sort of posts are, and sort of dive into that. And so this week, that's what we're going to do. We're going to review what had the most engagement and kind of discuss what we thought was expected, what was a surprise, and what we see going forward. So, Jeff, what do you got this week to kick it off?
Yeah, well, actually, to kick it off, I wanted to start by saying I find this fascinating. Separate from an individual item that we want to mention, the fact that with all of the things going on in our environment, so many people working from home and not commuting in whatever fashion that is, we're actually seeing podcasts typically are done, listening while you're driving in the car, sitting on the train, etc. And we've actually seen all the numbers go up. So I just wanted to shout out a big thank you to advisors for taking the time, effort, and energy in the midst of this chaos to listen, watch, and read the content that we're providing. So I had to throw a little note out there.
Well, I mean, that's actually pretty critical because I listen to podcasts, but I usually do it driving to the temporary office or driving to the gym. And so I haven't really listened to any of the podcasts I typically follow because those things have been taken away. So that's pretty reassuring. I know you and I go through this all the time, if banging our head against the wall for wasting our time with this thing. But it is good news that what do you call it, the usership?
I call it the usership.
The usership,
that's
the engagement
my own
for
name.
The podcast has gone up. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, let's start with the first thing. I think I wrote a blog about how bear markets can humble buy the dip investors. And I swear if this thing V recovers, I will write a blog about how a V recovery can humble the risk manager, to be fair.
V.
But that was the number one engaged blog for obvious reasons, right? We expected something like that. When you're in the middle of a bear market and you write a blog that talks about past bear markets and bear market rallies, you would expect that to be sort of up there. What we'll be telling is, next year, if we do this same sort of review, if this thing stays in there. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's like anything, right? You wanna put your money where your mouth is, and obviously, in all honesty and full disclosure, we have done a fair amount of promotion. This one just was released kind of at the beginning of March, and that's of course when all the hell broke loose. So that's why it's in the expected, right? On one hand, we're promoting it a lot. It's also very timely, so we kind of expected this would be the type of blog that we might see up here. But still, the fact that it was this high with such a limited amount of time for people to be able to read is what caught us off guard a little bit. But the concept definitely we thought would probably be up here in the top. So
yeah, I mean it's only been 30 days, I guess, because we stopped this analysis at the end of the quarter. So
right.
The other thing that was sort of expected, but also sort of surprising, because this is something I wrote at the beginning of January, was the danger of calendar year of returns. And I think it's going to be sort of timely again because, last year the S&P was up, roughly 32%, give or take. But a lot of other balanced allocation funds or risk managed funds allocations were not, right? And then you have an instance this year where you can already see the S&P because of the top 5 stocks being mostly tech stocks holding its own versus things like small cap and equal weight. So we might have another year where the focus on a singular year might be deceiving. But I was actually, although I was expecting it to see the engagement because it's about risk, I was kind of surprised that it was still up there, even because it's 3 months old.
Well, I think part of this is my take, and part of the reason I expected this to be up here a little bit higher was, it's definitely had a longer opportunity for readership. But also just the fact that what that tells me is advisors have seen obviously their clients in many cases experience pain, right? And anytime they experience pain, they start doing what? They start looking for other solutions. And in doing so, a lot of that was kind of along the lines of due diligence, right? It's really one of those things. Hey, we're talking to you about a common mistake, a common error that advisors make when they're looking for a new solution, and that's to look at calendar year returns, but kind of by itself or as a sole flag data point, and putting too much emphasis on that one item. So that's to me the reason that it fell into the expected category. But again, it's all, look, if the markets had been up another 30% this year, nobody would have given a crap about that, and nobody would have read it, right? I mean, that's the reality of what we deal with. So let me throw one out there as we move to the surprised category. The one that surprised me a lot, because I struggled a little bit in writing this, was fortunately we did a podcast first, and that helped. The podcast of our HSA, the Fidelity Experience, was the 4th episode of season 2, and that podcast obviously rose quite well. I really wasn't sure, because it is a niche. But this goes back to the thing we say over and over, which is part of our job is to find ways to help advisors make money and take care of clients, and finding a niche. That's the whole point of that, right?
Yeah, that one really surprised me as well, because frankly, HSAs are just been largely ignored. A lot of times they're smaller account balances. And what floored both of us was the amount of interest from advisors across the board, from current clients to prospects. And the thing that I kept reading through some of the notes that you put in the system was that people were coming to you saying, oh, yeah, I've 20 or 30 clients that I'm sort of helping out, but not really. And so there's never been sort of this platform to allow advisors to really help HSA accounts. So while you and I both thought it was a cool concept and something that should take hold, I don't think that we thought that it would have this much traction.
No, we've seen several advisors that have come to us from scratch and are doing business or considering doing business, and we've had some that maybe we only have a little bit of business that have contacted us. I mean, the largest so far is an $80,000 HSA account that they said, oh, we finally have a solution, right? I mean, it's that eureka moment when advisors go, wait a second, I've been doing the right thing, telling clients to use the HSA in this particular manner, and yet it wasn't to their own benefit. Kudos to those advisors, right? Well, now all of a sudden they can actually, benefit a little bit, along with bringing even more benefit to the client than just having the assets set there, right? Now we can get growth to take advantage of that triple tax free. So,
for sure.
So yeah, that was the one that was definitely my biggest surprise. What do you have? We got a couple of surprises. What's yours?
So this one was surprised because we know sort of how we're distributing content, and because obviously engagement goes hand in hand with how you're promoting and distributing what you're doing. So back in February of last year, I wrote a piece on the pros and cons of index funds, and it wasn't my favorite piece. Sometimes you're self-critical of your own writing, but at the same time, we really never promoted it outside of emailing it to our prospects, a couple social posts. But other than that, it's really just been hidden. And this quarter, it was up there, I think, in the top 5. And that really threw me off, because maybe it's just because everyone's at home and there's more engagement. But that sort of was a shocker to see on the list.
Like I said, index funds obviously are all fine and dandy. We've talked about this where, look, as long as you can sit there and hold on to them, that's great. But, that's I always thought that was, I know you said you struggled writing it. I actually enjoyed the read myself, because I thought you did a good job in coverage in that particular topic. So, like anything.
Well, I don't enjoy anything I write. So that's just, you finish writing it and you're like, what the fuck am I even talking about? But, anyway, that was surprising. And I know something that you wrote was also pretty surprising for me, because I just didn't think anyone gave 2 shits about this.
You don't think I can write worth a shit. And frankly, you're right.
No, but I don't think the topic. I mean, I don't think anyone cares about mutual fund share classes. Like, why is that on this list?
No, I completely agree. I don't write very much. You write many more of the blogs than I do, blog posts. But, we thought in the scheme of things, as we deal with individual advisors, and many of them are doing management themselves, it's one of the things in audits that's just, it's a hot topic for sure. And so we thought, all right, let's go ahead and write this thing and see if this is helpful. And I was doing, as I started, the more research I did, the more I just kind of kept slapping my forehead and thinking, I mean, this is insane, right? The responsibility that we all have. And, for us, it's just part of our process because managing money is the core of what we do. But for most advisors who are doing it themselves, that's not necessarily the core of what they do, right? It's something that they do. So to have and understand a resource to be able to look at the individual share classes and understand the responsibilities therein, I think is the reason that it certainly surprised me, but I guess that's the reason that it turned out to be a pretty highly read blog.
Yeah, or no one. I mean, I think part of it might be there have been a ton of articles and pieces of content put out that the SEC is sort of all over this. Maybe that helped. I don't know. I would have never guessed that this would be up there. So moving on to sort of what we think, what we want people to watch or listen to, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you and I talked about that I think is pretty cool is, we had these plans to make sort of changes to the business and more of a platform-esque, and some of the details still aren't ironed out. But I think this was back in November or December. We're like, hey, let's just document it. Let's start recording some episodes where we go through the steps of what we accomplished, what's next. And so we did episode 1, earlier this year. And the second one recently, and then hopefully, before launch or when we have more details, we'll do the other one. And I don't know, I think conceptually that's pretty cool because we're trying to share sort of the process as we're building it. And so I think that's something worth watching, especially if you're a current advisor or an engaged prospect to sort of get an idea of what we have up our sleeves.
Yeah, and the first episode, the one that we're referring to, that it was actually the season premiere for season 2, right in the beginning of January, and I think it is definitely something. Number one, we are seeing this. So it's not a pure pitch, right? We are seeing this one climb quickly. It was definitely up there, and because we just released the next one, but we released it in April, we didn't count that, and it definitely got engagement. So that's part of the reason that you and I decided that we need to make this a what should you watch, read, or listen to, right? We think that there's value there as you start having sister pieces come together from that standpoint, and that's the reality, right? It's a lot of advisors don't necessarily, right? You're in the middle of doing your job and you don't know all the things that are going on in the background, and we're just simply trying to have full disclosure and tell you, hey, here are the 14 balls that are up in the air, and as we can grab a couple of them, we're doing another podcast, right? And we think that there's some value in understanding how that comes together, and that may help find some good partners. So on that note, takeaways. It's any kind of final thoughts on expected surprise and what we talked about?
I mean, I do like this concept of just going through, because I think for advisors, I think any of your marketing or even operations, any of your business tasks, once a quarter, you sit down and go through your KPIs so you can make decisions on the future. And this is no different. When Christopher sent us that teamwork message and said, hey, this is what I've seen for the past 90 days, good, bad, and different. We sort of jumped on this as a way to move forward. So takeaway number one, I think, when you're in a risk-off situation, you're going to have more engagement on topics based on risk, right? I think that's obvious. Number two is, the promotion helps, and we can see that. You write something phenomenal and stick it in a newsletter that you send to 10 people, you're not going to get many views. So the distribution aspect of it clearly is starting to show in the data, where the more places you put it, the more eyes you're going to have on it. And we're also tracking the quality eyes, like how long it's being watched or read or things like that. But that's my key takeaway is timely content based on what's going on in the world is really helpful, and also distribution of your thoughts as an advisor.
Yeah. No. Well said. Mine's pretty simple. I mean, our objective, and this is what I look back at. Our objective for creating the Conquer Risk podcast, as well as writing the blog posts that we do, is all about education of advisors, making the advisor's job easier, and hopefully in the end that all comes together to make the advisors that much wiser and frankly better advisors. And so hopefully, because we are seeing extra engagement, increasing engagement, even through a time when everybody's life is in chaos. I mean, even as remote people, our lives are in chaos, even if it's the same routine every day. And the fact that more people we have more usership, that's impressive, and we want to say thanks, and hopefully we're doing the job that we set out to do. So what do you got for a recommendation, sir?
Well, I have an interesting one, actually, this week. Rosa and Alex Chalekian, friends of the firm. Alex was one of them on our podcast late last year, excuse me. They decided to get through the work from home environment that they would do a husband and wife show and record it. And what's interesting is they also work together. Rosa's going to be on one of our podcasts coming up in the near future. And so the episodes should be out by the time this airs. And I thought it was a good couple to keep a track on. It should be pretty hilarious. Rosa calls Alex out on his shit all the time, so it should be good comedy entertainment. So shout out to the Chalekians and definitely check that out.
All right, sweet. All right, well, mine's going to be a little weird, but a week or two ago, I gave a recommendation for my best rod and reel combo. I'm a fisherman. I love largemouth bass, and this week, I'm going to recommend Googan Baits. They say open, scratch, and catch fish. Basically. So based on the package, you just add water, and suddenly these lovely baits will catch you some ginormous bass. I'm out here on Lake Okeechobee, and obviously enjoying my time. But I couldn't help myself. The quick background: Googan Baits started with a bunch of knucklehead high school kids that just like fishing that much, they started putting stuff on YouTube. And between all of them, as their sort of followings built, now one of the partners is Scott Martin, who's son of Roland Martin, who is the most awarded bass fisherman in the history. And, they've come together now to create their own baits. I mean, these guys are making money hand over fist. It's pretty impressive, and they're all still knuckleheads, which is the greatest part on the planet. I mean, most of them have kids now and stuff, but it's just funny to go back and watch some of this.
The saying goes, every great business is started from something you're passionate about.
Yeah, well, so this is funny because they put pure passion right here on the package, and that's you're absolutely right. So that's it for us. Manish, you got anything else you want to throw in the fire?
That's it. Good quarter in terms of content, and hopefully we can keep it up and not quit.
All right, thanks, bud. We'll talk soon.
See ya.
Peace.